Hi, I am Dawn Westmoreland, hailing from Asheville, North Carolina, the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains, hailing from WPVM LP FM 103, 103.7, the voice of Asheville. And every week I have a show on Thursdays, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone, or if you're streaming it at another station, whenever you're listening to this. Good day to you. Today I have Tammy Barlette. And Tammy is a speaker, but most impressive is her background. She was an Air Force pilot, and now she is a speaker. And I'd like to get into that because we're going to talk about resiliency and perseverance, something we all need in our lives and even in the workplace. Tammy, can you give us a synopsis of your background?
Of course. So I went into the Air Force in 1998, and I spent 20 years, the entire time I was flying some sort of aircraft. So I started off flying the T-37 as an instructor pilot. I moved on to fly the A-10 Warthog. And then I had cervical spine reconstruction. And so I transitioned into flying unmanned platforms or remotely piloted aircraft, where I flew the MQ-1 and the MQ-9. So I was sitting in the States, flying a plane in Afghanistan or Iraq, fighting the war there. And then in my last assignment, I got a waiver for my neck, and I flew my last 6.5 years as a full-time reservist at Laughlin, teaching in the T-38, which is the fighter trainer for the Air Force pilots. Mm-hmm. Then after retirement, I went on, and that's when I decided to start Athena's Voice. And I've been doing that for about 4 years.
And what is Athena's Voice for our listeners' sake?
Oh, of course. Athena's Voice is a speaking business that features 10 female military pilots that speak at events across the world. So if anyone's looking for a speaker, there's multiple different options to choose from. And I am also one of the speakers, which is a really awesome experience. And it's really nice to share the messages of all these ladies in addition to my own message.
Yeah. I know I served in 85 to 2005, in the Air Force, and I don't remember seeing the first Air Force pilot throughout my career. So salute to you for being a pilot, a woman pilot. So let's talk about these 10 women and yourself. You're definitely different than, other women. Why did you choose, women who've been pilots to be speakers?
Well, to be quite honest, just with any entrepreneurial experience, the initial idea is not exactly what it's ended up being. The initial idea was to start with female fighter pilots because they're a known quantity for me. People I know, and I know their abilities and know their backgrounds. And the idea was to grow much further beyond that. The idea was to include all ranks, all services, all branches. It would just, and include lots of different ladies. And that hasn't happened because it's a bigger feat than I initially anticipated, which happens with a lot of entrepreneurs, right? So we've kind of kept it a boutique speaking business with just the female pilots. They're all fighter pilots with the exception of one. And the goal really was to just get more women out there speaking. There are a lot of men that are out there speaking to both men and women. And so the idea was to get women out there speaking to men and women. Because part of this actually came from, it was my husband's he planted the seed. He's like, you should go be a professional speaker. And I thought he was crazy. That wasn't something I was interested in at all, because believe it or not, I don't like the limelight at all. I would rather be up on stage with a team of people or backstage helping people. I just love helping people, but I took some time to let it sit. And I realized that not getting up there truly was a disservice to people behind me, because what happens is there's so many women that just quietly go off into the night and they never talk about what they did. And then the women that come behind them don't know that there was somebody who's already done it. So I like to compare this to a forest, a thick forest. If you're going to go through the forest, you need to pave a path. And there's been a lot of paths paved through this forest by women, but so many of us just, again, quietly go off into the night. So my idea was, well, let me keep this path clear and shine a floodlight on it, get people as far as I've gotten so they can get further. And so that's part of the intent, is really seeing is believing, to help people see that they can do this. in addition to sharing our messages, because we sometimes get pigeonholed into speaking just to women organizations, and that's a phenomenal place for our speakers to be. But there's a lot of lessons learned that we can share with both men and women. And so we're out there speaking to lots of different organizations.
And I know I'd love to hear what you're talking about, and our listeners too. I can only imagine. What kind of subjects are you talking about?
Well, with the women who are part of Athena's Voice, there is a lot of leadership. There is a lot of, my speech is all around perseverance. There's just there's teamwork, grit, confidence. There's so many things that these ladies talk about. And it really is truly amazing, because their experiences, although their career is unique, our experiences are not unique. So it's a shareable message for everyone.
And I'm curious, do you get a lot of women who come up to you and ask you how to be a pilot?
Well, I'm not currently in a place where there's a lot of people who come up to me and ask me that. That happened a lot when I was on active duty, going to air shows and wearing my uniform around. So I don't get that so much anymore. But it has happened.
And so I understand you're going to be the keynote speaker in San Diego on February 25th at GritCon. And GritCon is, Dr. Joy Bloom, Dr. Summer Watson, Ray Leonard Jr. And there's some other phenomenal speakers. You're going to all be out there, and you're going to be the keynote speaker. Can you share at least the subject you're going to talk about at this event?
Yeah, of course. So my theme throughout my career has really been perseverance. And so that really is my message. It's called a mission focused mindset. And it's all about, how do you keep going when everything inside of you is starting to tell you that maybe you should just give up? That voice inside of your head, your brain that's trying to protect you, how do you fight that? And so I talk about how to get through that. And, there's lots of different ways, but in a 45-minute keynote, there's only so much you can share. So there are three main themes I talk about. I talk about preparing. I talk about battling the enemies within. And I also end with getting in the zone.
That's going to be a great speech. So curious, perseverance. You've been through some personal things, personal traumas. How did you persevere? How did you not become a victim?
I think our mindset is really powerful, and it's really important. And, that's where the perseverance mindset comes from. So one of the things is the battling the enemies within pieces has been very important to me. And I think that's been a powerful influencer on my success. Meaning, when bad things happen or things don't go as you expect, you really have to deal with it, and not just, shove all those feelings into a corner and just let it sit there, because eventually, I call that, they're the enemies within, right? That enemy is eventually going to take over. And we're seeing a lot of that nowadays, a lot of mental illness and things that are really affecting people. And, it's so important. And if we can address it earlier and earlier, I think we can help more people. So really what I did was, a lot of times when something didn't go as I planned, or it was harder than I thought, I would acknowledge that. My instinct was to just put my head down and, just start working again and get moving forward. But what I eventually actually did was, I would pause and I would deal with the emotions of it, whether that was journaling, getting mad, punching something, working out, crying, I don't care.
Yeah.
And at the time, it truly felt like a waste of time. But it's not because what happens is now when I go to push forward and come out of that failure or whatever it is that happened, that heavy weight that was on me when I tried the first time is now lifted, and I can push through that struggle much quicker, much more efficiently, and I can get further. And I really think that was a lot of my successes, is framing it like dealing with it. And now let's move on. This doesn't define me as a person. It was just something that happened to me or something that I did, and I can move past it, not get stuck in it.
And Tammy, I'm so glad that you talked about, touched on mental health, because right now it's very popular, subject. There's a lot of people out there that don't have the capacity to handle stress, or maybe they don't have the support or the tools and things like that. Is that something that you work with a lot?
I mean, I talking more about the leading up to it. So
Mhm.
when it comes to someone who's actually in a situation where they're dealing with some serious mental health problems, I don't deal with that, but I'm definitely on the front end of that, trying to help people prevent that, because I think it's powerful. Preparing, I talk about preparing. So preparing for not only the expected, that's average. That's what everybody should do, but you need to prepare for the unexpected. And what does that mean? It means, what is the worst case scenario thing that thing that makes you go, if this happens, it's really going to suck. You have to think through that. And I'm not talking about in a way that you're going to make it happen. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy because you expected it to happen. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, okay, if this happens, this bad thing happens, this is how I'm going to address it. And then people will say to me, well, Tammy, you can't prepare for everything that could go wrong. That's very true. But you can kind of do one at a time, and then you can fill your toolbox with things that you can, to help you deal with when problems come up. Because the truth is that if you prepare for one or two or three bad scenarios, and you've put yourself in that place a few times to deal with it mentally, if something else happens that's problematic, you're already better off in a better mental place to deal with that problem, even though it's something you've never thought through. So I think that's really important. And then, you also need to find your people. You have to be able to find people that you can share your struggles with. That whole one of a pivotal moment in my life was when I learned of imposter syndrome. I didn't know that was a real thing. I literally sat in my own mind thinking, wow, what's wrong with me? Until I learned there was this thing called imposter syndrome, where you think you don't deserve to be there, or you didn't earn it. I mean, those are just self-doubts we all have. And once I realized that it's pretty normal, everyone has it, and it doesn't lessen as you get higher in the ranks. As you become more successful, it's still there, just morphs in different ways. And to know that other people struggled with that really made me have some peace. So that's that was helpful to me. And as far as keeping that mindset positive and not going down the path of, because I've slipped towards depression, towards anxiety, but I've never fully submersed myself. And I'm grateful. I mean, and there's lots of people who struggle with that. Some of it's genetic, some of it's situational, and there's nothing wrong with getting that help.
Sure. Absolutely. 8 years ago when I trained and learned to become a life coach, we called it a gremlin. That's that inner voice in your head that tries to keep you safe, the one that says, yeah, you're an imposter, the one that says you're not good enough, you don't deserve this. How do you teach people to turn that off? That inner voice, that negative voice?
Well, first of all, I think sharing that I experience it as well is very helpful to people. Sometimes people look at me and go, wow, what you've done. I'm like, well, I'm just like you. My career, I'm just like everybody else. I just chose a very unique career path. And for them to hear that I struggle with that as well is like, oh, okay, that's normal. Now, the next thing is to understand a little bit of why it's happening. And, our brains really want to keep us safe. That's their goal. And if this feels scary, it's going to tell you all sorts of things to keep you where you're at, keep you small and keep you secure. And we need to just understand that that's okay. And, I also like to think about, like in the gym, when we work out, everyone accepts the fact that when you're lifting weights, you go to failure, because that's how you grow. And that's the same thing when it comes to just what we do in our professional life. We got to push the boundaries. We got to go beyond what we think we can do to see where we can actually get. And if you fail, that's okay. Because one of the things I like to ask people, and I'm talking big picture here, so not like, if you were going to put together a team of people that you had to work with, would you rather work with and or hire someone who has failed or someone who has quit?
Yeah, good point.
Now, I would choose the failure any day, because failure often comes before success. And people who fail and get back up again have shown me something about their character. But quitters often keep on quitting. So there's a lot of times, even though in the situation where we feel like we want to quit, because that feels like it's a sign that's getting hard, that's a sign this is the wrong path.
Mm-hmm.
If you set a goal, like you do solid goal setting that's in alignment with your core values, and it gets hard, that's a really good sign that you are on the right path. It's powerful, and you push through that struggle to go after that goal. Now, unless something dramatic changes, I like to say I'm gonna fail out before I bail out, just like bailing out of an aircraft ejecting. So I'm gonna push towards failure before I ever pull that ejection handle and bail out.
Now, I don't get to interview too many women pilots, and I know our listeners are going to be wanting to know, what was it like, Tammy, to be in the Air Force flying jets?
You know, it was phenomenal. It was so amazing. I went into the Air Force to serve my country. I didn't even consider being a pilot until I walked through the ROTC detachment doors, and they said, "Hey, do you want to be a pilot?" And I had never thought of it because I'd never seen a pilot, not even a male pilot, let alone a female pilot. So, and I gave it some consideration, and I thought, you know what? This is perfect. I was a gymnast, roller coaster kid, adventurer. This sounded like a great job. And so there was some hiccups along the way because I had knee surgery in high school and they thought I wasn't eligible. And come to find out, I was eligible. And I went down the path, and it just kind of fell into place. And I just loved it. And my two favorite things about being a pilot was, I absolutely love teaching. Like, teaching flying was so rewarding to me. And I realized looking back that a lot of my instruction was not just the how to fly the plane, but it was mindset training. Because, you know, when you're up in the aircraft and something goes wrong, you can't just pull over on a cloud. It doesn't work like that. You have to persevere. There's just no choice. So I needed to help teach some of these students the proper mindset to get through the struggles and the challenges that they would face. And then the second thing is, this is more of, you know, a physical, it was fun, but I love formation. I absolutely love formation. Flying, you know, this aggressive high-powered jet that required finesse to maneuver with another aircraft was just, it was so challenging. And, you know, it's like dancing in the sky. It was just so cool.
Are you flying at all now?
Unfortunately, I am not. When I separated from the Air Force, the reason when I retired because I have 3 kids. They're 14, 13, and 8 right now. And I wanted to make it to 20 so that when I was done, I could focus completely on them. And because I'm a little bit of I don't do anything halfway. I don't know what halfway is.
Doesn't sound like it.
The flying piece is really difficult for me right now because there's a lot to know when you fly a plane, even a little plane. And I don't want to like worry that I'm not fully focused. So someday I hope to fly again, but I'm not flying right now, no.
And what did you get out of the Air Force as far as, you know, core beliefs or traits, you know, that you got out of the Air Force that you're implementing today in your work with your speaking?
Well, I think one of the things that I really learned from the Air Force, it goes back to my keynote, is perseverance, because I haven't when I've really looked back on my life prior to the military, I look back and I think, you know what, I'm a recovering quitter. And I didn't realize that, but I look back to high school and I think about all the things that I was really good at, but then I never got to that elite level because I quit. It got hard. I didn't have the support I needed. And ultimately, I'm not blaming anyone else but myself, but there was a lot of things not in place that if they had been there, I might have kept going. But when I got into the military, there were definitely moments that I wanted to quit. Believe me. I mean, just because I say I have a no quit mentality doesn't mean I don't have the thoughts. It's just, what do you do with the thoughts? You know, acknowledge, dismiss, right? Because in the military, you really can't quit. So this idea of I can't quit, it forced me to shift my mindset to a place where, okay, I got to get through this. How am I going to get through this? And I think that's the biggest thing that the military taught me, was how to just keep going. And you can, like, this sounds kind of simple, but when quitting's not an option, you will find another way. So I like to try and teach people to not let, like, once you make the decision to do something and there's nothing drastic that's changed, you just don't allow quitting be an option. And that will also lead you down that no quit mentality, or the failure before you bail out kind of mentality as well. So, I mean, that really taught me a lot about that. I mean, I also learned a lot about leadership and, good and bad. Being in the military, you have a lot of different leaders, and you're in a lot of different squadrons, and you see a lot of different things that work and don't work. And so I really saw a lot of how to treat people so they want to perform. And I thought that was a powerful lesson from the military.
Yeah, pretty amazing. And today there's so many things going on that are stressing people, traumatizing. We've been through the pandemic, inflation's going up. And, we have people that'll say I'm a survivor of some kind of trauma. But how do they get to where you're at? A thriver, not just somebody who survived some kind of trauma. How do they become a thriver?
Well, I think that part of it, or a huge part of it for me, is to not let that event, that trauma, define you. It is not who you are. Mm-hmm. I mean, even when it comes to my career, a lot of times people will think I'm defined by my career, and I don't see myself like that. I mean, it's the same thing. So someone who defines themselves by what they do, when they retire, they struggle, right?
Sure.
Because now they don't know who they are anymore. So it's important that we realize that trauma, or that whatever happened, is just something that happened, and it will continue to affect us our entire life. It's going to be there, but it should not define you. And that leads me into that also. What is your next step? And for example, someone who wants to be a mom and they want to work, or a dad, it doesn't matter. Mom, dad, it doesn't matter. If you want to work, people have ideas of, well, I don't know how to be a good mom and work, because they have this idea of what a good mom is. Well, what I'm getting to here is that when you have a transition and you're trying to move on and define who you are and where you're going, you have to define what success is for that specific role, whatever role it is you're going to play. So when you're doing good and when you're not doing good, and you can define yourself based on these guidelines you set for yourself, not based on something that happened to you in the past. I mean, it's going to come up again at some point for sure, but going forward, what does a good mom look like? What does a good boss look like? And give a definition to that, because to me, and I'll use the example of the mom thing because it's really easily understandable. At first, I saw a good mom as June Cleaver. And if you don't know who that is, it's a 50s mom who was dressed all nice, her hair's all done, her makeup's on, she greets the kids at the door with cookies, and she was perfect, right? That's what we thought. And if you hold that standard for yourself, for any mom, let alone a working mom, you're going to feel like a crappy mom all the time, or a crappy dad, if you're defining yourself by these certain things. So what does it look like for you? What can you achieve? That when I'm home with my children, I'm fully with them. And that when I'm not with them, they're in the best care they can be. And for example, when I was flying, I used to get out of the jet. I remember a couple of times I got out of the jet and I thought, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about my kids in 3 hours. What a terrible mom. And then wait, that's not right. A good mom is not defined like, oh, I never stop thinking about my children. Like, really? That's not realistic. And when you're flying a high performance aircraft, if my mind is somewhere else, I'm not doing my kids justice by not having the focus that I should. So whenever I'm away from them, I give it all to whatever I'm doing to kind of honor them, And I know I've gotten into the mom role a lot, but you can do that with any role that you have. What does it mean to you? Not what does it mean in society? Same thing with an entrepreneur. Like, I thought that I had to have the biggest growing huge business. And I wasn't feeling successful, but I decided I A, couldn't handle that, but B, I didn't want that. So I redefined what a successful business was for me with Athena's Voice, and I'm very happy with it now. So it makes a difference.
Sounds like you're also talking about personal growth, not just business success. Is that right?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, it's all tied into each other, but yeah, I mean, some of it was what is success for me, right? And what makes sense for me versus what we think society thinks we should do. You know, all of us worry to some level, whether it's a sliver or a ton, what other people think. You know, if you say
Sure.
you don't
Yeah.
worry about what anybody else thinks, then I don't quite believe you. Because we all should be concerned a little bit, you know, and some level. But we need to watch how much we do that, to include, you know, letting society define what is successful for us, because it doesn't have to be that, whatever that society thing is, you know.
Yeah. Tammy, who is your ideal client, your audience?
I love to speak to mid-level business leaders because I think that they're the heart of, they have the reach down, they have the connection up. And I think that that is a powerful piece of any organization. So I really like to speak to organizations that they're mid-level people. So I can help them not only persevere themselves, but how to lead their organization and their people to persevere. Because although we do need to address all of, you know, the mental health struggles, and we also need to keep developing that perseverance and grit to keep on going and have a little bit more of a no quit mentality, so we can move forward as a society outside of, you know, all coming off this pandemic and things that have happened.
Yeah. As we wrap up, time goes fast always. Oh boy. How did somebody reach out to you if they're interested in bringing you on as a speaker, or they want to find out more about you or your work, your mission?
The best place to find me is really on LinkedIn, and it's just my name, Tammy Barlette. That's Tammy with a Y, and Barlette is spelled Barlette. So LinkedIn is the best way. If you're not on LinkedIn, you can go to a website, athenasvoiceusa.com. So Athena is in the goddess of wisdom and war, voice as in your speaking voice, USA.com. And there's a connection link on there. You can email me directly. I can you can get hold of me that way as well.
Great. And I want to reiterate that you're going to be the keynote speaker at GritCon in San Diego, California on February 25th with Ray Leonard Jr. And who are the other speakers? Do you have an idea of the other speakers?
I have the list, but it's just, this recently just happened, so I don't have that directly in my mind. But anyone who's interested, we're looking to speak to entrepreneurs, veterans transitioning out, military spouses, and business professionals just looking to up level and make connections. A lot of it is going to be about connection and meeting the people that you surround yourself with, like-minded individuals. It's powerful.
And what does connection mean to you?
Well, connection, to me, it's really important. It's you authentically connecting with someone else. And for me, in a way that I can help them, because I just honestly love helping people. So anyone I run into, I'm always looking for something I can do to help them out.
And I can see how you could be a very good mentor to many people, especially the young men and women who are getting out. And San Diego, that area is full of military people, and I've never been in San Diego myself. So you're probably going to have a lot of veterans there, military people that are coming to GritCon and to hear you and the other speakers. And I'm sure a lot of them that are getting out, or maybe they just got out, are probably a little bit confused of all the steps to take.
Yeah, it is challenging. I knew that getting out, that it was going to be challenging, but until you really experience it a little bit, you're not exactly sure what the hurdles are that are going to be coming at you. So it's nice to have people around you who've been through it and are still going through it. To be quite frank, you know, we can all, especially, you know, when you're trying to redefine yourself on the outside, or you're trying to start a business, you can feel very alone sometimes. And it's nice to have other people to surround you.
Yeah. Tammy Barlette. How many years? 20 years in the Air Force? 20 years. That's a long time.
I would have stayed longer, but my husband, he's a Border Patrol agent, and it was time for me to let him, you know, kind of take his career as the priority career in our family. So,
well, we're out of time. To the listeners, thank you, Tammy. Stay empowered.